I personally made a choice from high school not to go to school to become an artist. My story kind of began because when I was growing up very young, art was always in me. It was something that I knew that that's what I wanted to do. And I challenged my grandfather, because he was an artist, to pass teachings on to me. And the first thing my grandfather said to me was, I'm sorry, I can't teach you native art. And I was kind of very puzzled, and I was probably about 8, 9 years old. And he said, not until you're ready. And I didn't know what that meant. So he said, why don't you get a sketchbook and maybe go down to the wharf and draw the boats and sit on the beach and draw mountains and draw birds and draw everything. So I did that for like a couple of years, and I finally came back to him with a sketchbook filled with all of this stuff. And he said, wow, you know, you are serious about this. So then he finally said, okay, you know, I'll start to teach you. And he started teaching me some of the basic fundamentals of what the art form is about. But with the teachings from an early age that I had kind of grown with, it wasn't just about the artwork, that there's life behind it, there's an energy behind it. And none of these things mean anything without the culture and the stories that go with it. So for me to be sitting on a beach studying a raven and drawing it, it was more than that. It wasn't just, that was our culture, that's the way we did it. It was like, how did that raven move? So then when you incorporate those and you take it into a big house, into our potlatch societies, and then for some reason, if somebody asks you, you know, to carve a raven headdress, and then maybe you have to dance it, you kind of know what's going on if you sat there and watched this raven move, so you can move like it and mimic it. So all of these started to kind of come together for me, and my passion was there. So, you know, he started to teach me all the basics of native art, and I didn't realize it till way later actually about all the teachings that I had got from my grandfather, because he had opened up so many doors way before I had even known, by just saying, draw everything. I wasn't limited after a while. It was like, wow, like I can express my artistic creativity in any way possible with anything that I want. And then when I moved to Victoria, it was like that. So then, as I was growing older, I started to kind of think about our culture and really kind of dive back into it further before contact, further before Europeans. What was the art form about? It was about life for us. It was connecting with nature. It was connecting with all the elements of life, whether it's the river or the skies and the mountains. It wasn't just a mask, you know, it was something that was that energy, that form, that life that made it what it was. So then I started to think about, well, that's what our culture is. That is what, you know, that's what freed us from everything. And then from there, you know, with contact, and then, you know, unfortunately with residential school and the banning of our potlatching, and then, you know, and the government not understanding what our culture really meant. Our language was disappearing, our songs were disappearing, and our potlatching was banned. And then from there, all of our massive stuff were burnt, and they were trying so hard to kind of like wipe it out, that in doing that, from some of the stories I hear growing up from my grandmother, was they didn't realize that our culture is about a higher level, like a higher power. And we used to burn things, and we still do, to feed our people on the other side. If somebody had passed on, we'd burn food, and we still do that for them, because that's a connection. They're in the spirit world, but that doesn't mean they're not with us, because we're connected in that energy again. So by burning these masks, it was like saying, for us, it was like, well, they're in safekeeping, because our ancestors have them with them, and we can recreate them whenever we want. So you know, it's kind of like when the storm calms, we recreate and we rebuild, because the legends that are there and that connection with the land will never disappear. It's how we tell our story. And the legends, if we follow them and we follow that simple philosophy of life, whether it's about our whole connection, like from the beginning of everything, is about honoring life itself to the fullest, starting with our children and making sure that our children, right from 10 months old, when we have a feast for them, that they're loved, and showering them with that, because that is going to be the key to their freedom, to success of life and moving forward. All of the stuff from residential school had taken that away from us. So a lot of our communities are still lost in finding that. So we're slowly getting there. Yeah, I think it was the masks and the rituals and things like that. You know, it's completely different. It's just so foreign. So as we move through the exhibit, it'll be about those dark times and the early times where we didn't have a voice as First Nations people. And we still actually, you know, in our communities still feel that way very strongly, and are still trying to find our way through. For me, it's through my artwork. The starting point that you see, like there's a mask, you know, and it's burnt. And this is from the time where the banning of the polishing was going on, and all of our masks are put in the center, and we're forced to burn everything. And I wanted to kind of have this be the center starting point, and the mouth is broken out because that was the voice that was taken away from us. This is the loss of our language, this is the loss of our songs, the loss of all of that. And then it's just, you know, and it's burnt, and it's just like a reminder that this was there, it was in effect. As you move through, it's like there's a corpse. And for me, when I was making that, it was really intense. It was like, this whole show actually was a lot of work for me. Like I had to kind of really process a lot of stuff, because I had to go back to my family and my elders and research some of the stories and relive it with them about what had happened. And it was really intense. As you move downstairs into that part, I wanted to kind of just share with people that even though we're First Nations artists and we have legends and origin stories and we create around mythical beings and all of this, that we can still connect to everyday life. And I can still be a Native artist and connect to fun things as well. And you'll see a big panel that's like a tango scene. And I'm like, you know, I like to go and, you know, watch tango and have fun. But it's how I see it as an artist, as being First Nations. It's like, well, if I were to kind of be anywhere in the world, how I would tell my story would be where I'm from, but I could, you know, share it and connect on that same level. So all the pieces that you see down there are from that. It's just a whole new, me creating from today now, and thinking about the future, allowing ourselves to kind of continually express and explore and be curious. And in the future, looking back at this period saying, wow, okay, there's that artist Rande Cook. He was creating at this period of time this, and not to be replicating things from a museum, because I think that'll just puzzle the future. It's like, okay, well, what period was this from, and what period, well, that one, they look the same. It's like, well, you know, and I don't want to kind of be that kind of artist. I want to kind of continuously push the boundaries. This is blocked out as a raven. It was, you know, it's the starting. I thought it was kind of a perfect piece to kind of put in here without having anything on it, because we're talking about recreating. So it's like just by blocking out this, which is going to be a raven mask, you can see the first stage before it actually becomes the next. Yeah, so it shows that the energy is still being put into it and it's going to come to life. It all started from one of our teachers from home, who I absolutely adore in every which way. His name was Doug Kramer. And in the 60s, 70s, 80s, he started pushing the boundaries of Northwest Coast art and form. Never really called himself, you know, a master or anything like that. He called himself a whittler, and he kind of just laughed, and he said, you know, I just reached a point where I didn't want a bird to look like a bird. I didn't want a whale to look like a whale. I just kind of wanted to have fun and, you know, make it more abstract. So I liked that, and some of the stuff he was doing was just, to me, I thought was just pushed like way past its time. I wanted the pieces to reflect today, and or other cultures, and to show that us as Native artists, that we can continually move and share styles and still withhold our own identity as First Nations artists. So it was like, for me, I had never seen a big piece of artwork with this piece, like First Nations telling a whole story about a dance, like, and it being like a tango, you know? And I wanted the music to be alive, and I want the energy to be alive. I wanted the move, like, to kind of fall into the lines, that everything was flowing, that you can actually fall into it. The whole point of the show for me too was using color. I wanted as much color as I possibly could, because I wanted people to see the color first and get the energy of that color, and then fall into the story behind it. Having the lines flow continuously all the time, so your eye is always moving, but then having them very, having, you know, the dancers very separate, and you kind of see what it is. So it was like, well, if there's legends of the past, and they're telling stories about, you know, creation stories and on, it's what they had heard, and it's what was passed on, and it was what was created from the artist at that point. And I thought, well, you know what, this is kind of cool. I think I'll just go with it, because I had such a big piece to work with. So that was kind of the starting point on that. Then I kind of moved through the show, and you'll see like some of the other pieces, like there's like a simple dragonfly. And it was just showing the grace behind it, that, you know, that it could be very delicate, and the colors can bring it to life, and that the elements and everything are still there. If you're looking for the elements of First Nations, like our art form, they're all there. I haven't recreated anything. I haven't, you know, I've just changed colors and overlapped them a little bit more than anybody else would do. This piece that you see with the mask with the white hair is titled Beethoven. It's kind of fun. It has like some Celtic stuff on the forehead, and I just kind of wanted to reference some of the European, because a lot of the stuff that we get is all European. You know, they're a big influence on everything that we do, whether like from the earliest time with ship stuff, when we first started getting copper, and that's why I wanted to use copper on a lot of the pieces. Once we kind of started to get copper, we made these, well, we call them coppers, and they were our biggest, is like, I guess if I were to compare it to anything today, it would be like a debit card, because we didn't have a form of currency. So it's like these coppers are made that chiefs had them, and everything was documented. So all the wealth that a chief had was in this copper, and it would be every potlatch he had, how much money he gave away, and that, you know, before contact, it wasn't even about money, it was about furs and blankets and all of these things that he would give away to the people. It was documented, and the more was recorded in these coppers. And if another chief ever wanted to confront or challenge that chief, he would have to bring a copper of equal value and break a piece of it to show. And if that other chief couldn't break the copper of equal value, then he had to live with that, and the other chief always had that bigger standing. So they broke coppers to challenge each other. That's not allowed anymore. We're not allowed to do that in our culture. And the mask and stuff itself, like just the white hair, for me, it was just like, I just think about music. Like everything we do is all about song. We tell our stories through songs. And I was like, I was thinking about like Beethoven and on, and of that time and those eras, and just how classical music itself. And then I started thinking about classical music and relating classical music to classic form of us. To study classical form line is the fundamentals of Native art. And if you study long enough and you know how to put it together, it opens up the future that much more for you to be able to create the art form. And I think it's the same with music. You know, if you can study the fundamentals of classical music and on, it just enhances it that much more. So it's just me making those connections and having fun. And this mask is like made for, you know, to be worn as well. Just talking about the evolution of our art form and stuff, and that if the legends are intact, one of my best friends told me, we're questioning, there's always this question of like, how far can you push it before it's not traditional anymore? And that's the big question that comes up with Native artists all the time, is like, when are you no longer a traditional artist? And the question came up with him, and he said to me, he goes, you know what? It will always be traditional if you're creating from the old stories. It doesn't matter how you express yourself anymore, because what makes it traditional is the authenticity of that legend that you're connected to. You can recreate your art form as much as you want because that's what's yours, but it's still traditional because it's connected. So for me, I just wanted to touch on that. This is comes from the legend of the Zunaqua, and she was like this, what, I don't know, I guess we refer to as like a Sasquatch, or, you know, but this woman that lived deep in the forest and was always trying to capture children, and she would feast on them, and she was so slow and kind of, you know, not very smart, and the children always got away, the legend said. And then it's the basket she has in the back that she try and capture them and put them in, and it's all torn on the bottom. But yeah, and I wanted to kind of think about this story, and then I think about this, I read legends and I think about our stories and our culture, and I think about the metaphors. And I always try to go a little step further to really understanding what the purpose is and what the meaning is. And it's like, here you have this very grotesque woman living deep in the forest and far from everybody, and she can't really connect with society, and she's not accepted or whatever. And then I think of like today, of how many times I think, you know, women feel that way and feel disconnected and aren't really there because everything is based on beauty, or, you know, it's like there's always challenges in life. And so for me, when I was creating this, it was like this dark center of the past, like the red, and then within her skin tone is all the dark colors. And then I wanted to kind of liberate the story a little bit, and then as you come breaking outside of the box, it gets lighter, and then her skin tone changes lighter as well. And she had long hair, and it was always like in her face, and she's always sleepy, and she's always like yawning and had big perched lips. So I wanted to kind of put her hair up so they could see her face and make it more kind of elegant and just connect with today. Yeah, there's songs that were made for celebration, and there's songs and dance that are made for every occasion, whether it's drinking and celebrating that way, or if it's birth, or if they're weddings. And then there's sacred songs that go with personal dances, and those are people's personal songs. So those you don't want to kind of share whatever, but it's like celebration songs and feasting songs and things like that. Then they're like, well, yeah, sing them, because we're celebrating that moment. Why not? You know, it's like, hey, if we're gonna eat and thank the host, then sing loud. You know, so yeah.